I know, I know, I know, I know.
When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. When you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. That's right.
Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Camry. I know, I know, I know, I know. Don't look at the clock. Don't look at the last time that I posted. I promise there's a really good reason for it. But I will just rewind and introduce myself because I realize I've gotten new subscribers since my YouTube hiatus, although that was unintentional, but I'm back now. So let's start with the intro. My name is Camry. I am a second year categorical pediatrics resident. I am ultimately interested in going into primary care. Being a pediatrician has been something that I wanted to do since I was 6. And so it is an insane blessing. And sometimes it blows my mind to think that I'm doing exactly what I wanted to do. But I created this channel back when I was applying to medical school while I was in college as a bridge of one, sharing my journey to medicine, because I felt like there were a lot of med influencers who made the journey look very sweet and easy, and it by far is not. So I wanted an authentic channel that really relayed the real raw emotions and things that you feel as you go through this journey. With, at that time in college, I was grappling with being called to ministry and what that would look like as someone who ultimately was going to end up being a physician. And so I bridged the two together and really used this channel as a way to uplift, encourage, and mentor, especially underrepresented minorities who are pursuing medicine in hopes that I can help inspire them and provide mentorship. So here we are. Welcome back. Like I said, this was not a planned hiatus. I actually had, and sorry, I have notes to keep me on track because there is a lot to catch up on. But if you remember, the last video I posted was my match week vlog or match day vlog. And so if you don't know what that is, fourth year medical students go through the match where they apply for their first doctor job in the specialty of their choosing. And so I vlogged that entire week leading up to it, explaining what match week is. And we were living on a high. I matched at my #1 dream program. And I have loved every minute of it so far. And I am now a second year. In pediatrics residency is 3 years. So I'm halfway through my second year. So halfway done with residency. And it has been an amazing journey. I've met so many great co-residents. But I had so many plans for M&M right after match day, and they all kind of came to a screeching halt. And so now I was going to come back and just start pushing out content that I had already planned for you guys, but I did not feel that it was genuine or authentic to who I am or my story to leave out this big gap. And it is my hope that by sharing this, it can encourage someone who might be in college, pre-med, not just in med school yet, in med school or in residency, who is struggling to grapple with what happens when you have to keep going and life keeps giving you hits. It's really easy to say like, oh, it's okay, just trust God. God will strengthen you. But when you're living it in real time, sometimes it's very hard to push through. And so that is what this video is all about. And so I'm going to be talking about today what happens when the promise looks different. And if you have watched my video detailing my journey just to getting into medical school, I kind of pin at this a little bit, but it's from kind of a different mindset, because I've addressed this question in the sense of, God, it's taking too long. I know that you've promised me something. I'm holding on to that promise, but it feels like it's never going to come. And I keep getting hit with obstacle after obstacle of getting that promise that you told me that you had for me. That is kind of what I addressed then. But now I'm more so addressing when you actually get the promise, but living it does not necessarily match the vision you had. It is not necessarily feel as exciting sometimes as you would have expected it to when you were grinding and working so hard to get there. And so I will start and address the obvious thing. I don't want people to think like, oh, she dropped out. No, like I graduated from medical school on time. I started residency on time, and I have not had to take a break. But that little bit of time from match day through like the beginnings of intern year just had a lot of blips in life. And I had to struggle to reconcile feelings, emotions, while still making sure that I'm staying on top of starting a new job, learning how to be a doctor. And so through all of that, I had birthed so many ideas about what M&M would be. I still have those ideas. And so as I pulled up on my medical school graduation, a lot of you who have subscribed to my channel have actually followed my journey from before I was even accepted to medical school. And so I had this big grand idea. I had already vlogged match day and match week. I was going to vlog my medical school graduation, especially because one, inspiration, you don't often see, especially underrepresented minorities, people that look like you who really broadcast that journey and broadcast it authentically. So I was really excited to do that. And then all of a sudden, right after match day, it all came to a halt. Literally right after match day. I actually remember being super excited. If you see on my vlog, I organized like a big Zoom for the people who couldn't be at the celebration in person, and we all found out where I was going together. I went out to dinner that night with family and friends. And then a couple days later, my school's chapter of SNMA basically had like a match day party. And I remember being in the photo booth, taking pictures and still checking my phone intermittently because my grandmother, her health had kind of taken a nosedive. And so I was present in the moment, celebrating, but also obviously still thinking about what's going on back home. And that kind of began a season that was a little bit of a struggle for me, if we're being honest, for a multitude of different reasons. My grandmother passed away 10 days after my match day. So she was not on the Zoom per se because my grandmother was a little bit older, so she didn't necessarily have, like be able to get on Zoom, but people recorded my video and showed it to her. And so she passed away 10 days after my match day, which was 4 days before my scheduled final day of medical school, like no more classes, anything like that. And then that was also 5 days before my birthday. So all of that happened and everything just kind of came to a screeching halt. I kind of switched from being on cloud nine, being very excited, to there were lots of competing things in my head that needed to happen. And so just for some context, I have had the privilege of having my grandmother in my life, which is very special for me because she is the only grandparent that I've had throughout my entire life. And this is my mom's mom. My grandfather on my mom's side passed away before I was able to know him. And similarly, on my dad's side, his mother passed away before I was born. And so I ended up being named after her and my middle name. And then my grandfather on my dad's side passed away when I was so young that I don't really have many memories, except maybe some flash memories being a toddler. But my grandmother on my mom's side, she was it. She was the only grandparent I've ever known. She was our family matriarch. And so that hit a little bit hard. As you can imagine, that season was a struggle. First of all, the timing of it, she was so proud to have a granddaughter who was going to be a physician. One, because I told her from the time I could crawl that I was going to be a doctor. Two, I was the first doctor on our side of the family. Three, my grandmother was older. And my grandmother is from North Carolina, or was from North Carolina. And so when you think about the storied history of the things that she's had to give up and the sacrifices she made so her kids could have a better life, my grandmother was one of the oldest of a lot of siblings. And my grandmother actually kind of came up with She was still working in factories and plants, and sometimes out in sharecropping type of relationships back in that time. And so when I think about everything she's had to overcome, this moment was so huge for her. And so when you think about that context of, we were trying to figure out how to get her on a flight, even though she was in a wheelchair, because she was going to see me walk across the stage. And so she passed away, and then I had to switch gears because I also had 4 days of medical school left to finish, for which I had to be in Ohio, but also now we are planning a funeral. And so in the broader context of thinking about a fourth year medical student, actually, if you've heard of fourth year best year, this is the time where all your hard work pays off. All M4s are like on a beach somewhere. They're out living their best life. They are living it up before residency starts and starts kicking their butt. They're taking these last minute trips. You're not really doing a lot of hardcore classes. And I just knew that that's what I was going to be doing. All through medical school and preparing, I was ready to think about all the trips I was going to take. My birthday was going to be this big thing. But now I was figuring out how to finish my last little bit of medical school while grieving my grandmother, while going home to basically help plan her funeral. And so, like I said, she's in North Carolina. A lot of y'all know I'm from Maryland. So I had to fly home to Maryland, which is where I spent my birthday. And I remember, like, on my birthday, my mom was sitting at the kitchen table writing my grandmother's obituary. So very different than what I had pictured that would look like. And then on top of that, I've been to funerals, but I don't think I've ever, until my grandmother, been a major part of planning. And so my cousins and I, with my mom and her sister and her brother, really helped pick up the slack and kind of help with running errands, helping to think through what she's going to be buried in, going to pick out those outfits. We had some custom pieces made, making sure that the program was together. I even have the memory of, which I hold dear now, of right before the viewing, when they asked the family to come in and look at the body and make sure that it looks okay, standing at the casket with my mother. I had never been that close to the funeral planning process before. So I had all of that going on in the background, while, let's not forget, my family was so excited because I'm the first doctor in the family. When I say we had planned to go all out, there were room blocks at hotels specifically for our family. We had reserved a space, multiple kind of banquet rooms at this hotel for a 3-hour graduation party with DJ, with catered food, the whole 9 yards. And so you have the hotel calling to finalize contracts while you're also trying to take calls to help plan a funeral. And of course, I'm moving across the country to start my intern year. And so we also have to find a place to live, sign a lease, while competing with all the other people moving to this new city. And so I had all of these things going on. And I remember trying to plan all of this and getting towards my graduation day thinking, God, of all the ways I envisioned this momentous occasion in my life going, I never imagined it looking like this. But I'm going to trust you, and I'm going to need you to give me the strength to get through it. I remember saying that prayer. And for some broader context, cherry on top, I was in a car accident literally 2 to 3 days before my medical school graduation. So I had family coming into town, and I was like hitching rides and Ubers from family because my car was out of commission. Thank God my parents are already in Ohio for my graduation to help finalize things. And so they were able to like come to the crash site, help me. But I was stuck in my car. I couldn't even open the driver's side door. That's how bad the crash was. And so that also added another layer of complexity with the cross-country move and getting a car fixed. And it was the other driver's fault. So going through insurance, getting my car fixed, having a rental car to get around, figuring out a way to move my car cross-country while also packing up a new apartment to move. while let's not forget, the grief is still fresh, and it's not like we're grieving a distant family member. This was part of our rock. And so as you can imagine, the vlogging and the M&M and all of that, the plans that I had just kind of drifted a little further down my list, because once I moved, it was, I need to learn how to be a doctor. Intern year comes with its own set of experiences and challenges. And so I just really needed to be in a space where I was present and taking care of myself and really just soaking in the love of my friends and family. So I clearly had to kind of reconcile some emotions, but also kind of clinging to my faith and realizing that I needed to change the way that I was interacting with God. I often say that 2023 was the year that God fulfilled lifelong dreams and aspirations for me, while also simultaneously allowing me to say and believe that the joy of the Lord is my strength. And so with that, there were two scriptures that kind of came to mind during this season that helped sustain me and guide me. So the first one is Psalm 63, verse 7. Which states, "Because you are my help, I sing in the shadow of your wings." And whenever I felt overwhelmed with graduation planning, or like I need to find an apartment, or I need to sign a lease, and I need to figure out how I'm going to get my car to Houston, and all these things, I would say that to myself, because at the end of the day, yes, there are things I needed to do to make sure that those things happen. But ultimately, my help and my source of strength came from God. And as soon as I remembered that and leaned into that, I had a sense of calmness and peace wash over me. And I could literally picture myself just dancing under the wings of God's safety, feeling calm, knowing that all things will work together for my good, that all the million things on my to-do list will get done. And I can take a moment, even with this grand celebration, because I did work very hard for this moment, to stand and enjoy and bask in God's goodness and under his protection. And so that kept me and sustained me and keeps me now, even in residency. That's a story for another day. And then I also think about Job, in Job 42:5, where Job says, "My ears have heard of you, but now my eyes have seen you." And so I talk about, I think in my Bible study, about being satisfied with God. I have often heard about God being a comforter and being your peace, but I don't think I've ever had life circumstances that forced me to lean into that until this happened. And it was one of those things where I've heard it, I've seen other people live it, but I lived it for myself. And I can say confidently that God will keep you, your heart, your mind, will give you peace, will give you strength when you feel like it's too much. And so I kept those scriptures in my head to remind me that it's okay. One, it's okay to not be okay, to still be grieving, even if you're 3.5 months out. Because that's another thing. I had so many moving pieces in the immediate part of her death. Like, I was jumping from finishing med school to planning the funeral and so many things to do that I think maybe 3 or 4 months after, I said, whoa, my grandmother died. And I think it was one of those moments where I said, oh, okay, we're still grieving, and that's okay. And so through that season, I learned, which was a great foundation for going into residency, where life be life, and life happens. And it's so fast paced. You're working so many hours that if you are not intentional about checking in with yourself, it is easy to drown and get caught up in everything that's going on and neglect yourself. And so I thank God for the lesson and that season, because it set kind of the tone for how I was going to be intentional about taking care of myself and not letting residency take me out. I've seen lots of residents get burned out, become apathetic early on, frustrated with the journey. And I decreed and declared that will not be me. And I use this season as my cultivating time to be by myself, and to really lean in to God and strengthen my relationship with God, and really learn how to check in with myself and what that really means. And so I learned emotions come and go. Feelings come and go. They fade. One day you feel great, another day you might not. But joy is stable. It is a choice, and it's a state of being. I literally remind myself often that God's love for me has no bounds. And so that's where the source of my joy comes from. God cares for me. And I cling to that even when it's hard, even when I don't understand why things are happening the way it's happening, even if it doesn't look the way that I thought it would look, wanted it to look. God is still sustaining me daily, no matter the circumstances around me. And so God is meeting every need, both the needs that I physically see that I need and needs that I didn't even know, but because God knows me well enough, also gives me what I need. And so joy and a posture of worship sustained me. And I choose to not let anything, no matter life circumstances around me, change that, because God always chose me. Even when I don't do what I'm supposed to do, even when I'm hard-headed, even when I don't do what he's called me to do, even when I have an attitude about doing what God's called me to do, he's been my everything. And so we don't get to choose divine timing, although I know sometimes we wish we could, but then it would not be divine timing. And ultimately, we have to yield and accept God's will, even if it does not align with our will or what we would have wanted for ourselves. And so I was able to have joy through all those changing seasons because I knew I could depend on God, because he's proven himself over and over again. And that came from having a relationship with God and staying in his word. And so in the midst of living in an answered prayer, I became acquainted with God's character. And something tangible, this big blessing that I was excited to have, didn't overshadow the intangible lesson that God was trying to teach me in that season as well. I literally walked across the stage and got my MD degree leaning into God's strength in that moment, in that season of my life, and not my own. I remember having my mentor hood me, and I could hear the entire hall erupt. Like I said, my family was deep and it was so loud. And I remember I had tears in my eyes because that moment, even with all the other circumstances, all the other emotions, the bittersweetness of it all, I felt nothing but euphoria. It was such an inexplainable feeling. And I just laughed because leading up to that, I'm like, God, this is not how I pictured this looking. My emotions are all over the place. And I did all of that just to have that moment, just basking in God's goodness. It was quite a moment. And as I was preparing to walk across the stage, and my mind played this mental movie of everything I overcame to get to that moment right there to walk across the stage, even if I was still sad and grieving because my grandmother wasn't there, or because the last couple of months of medical school didn't look the way I thought they would look. God whispered to me and said, "Isn't this still an answered prayer? Do I not still deserve the glory for this moment?" And y'all, when I tell you that changed my entire mindset, and really reminded me that, yeah, it might have been a bumpy ride to get there, but God carried me through. So many people don't even make it standing to that point. And here I was with everything I went through over the last couple months, standing there, walking across the stage with my head held high. That was nothing but God, and why I always say that that was a God moment that I will never forget. And I replay that in my mind often when on the bad days during residency, where you don't always save a patient, where you wonder the semantics and the politics of residency. God, is this what being a doctor is really like? Especially in this political climate. And you have those moments of, hold on, God. Ooh, we made it to MD status, but it's a little hard. Am I cut out for this? I keep all of that in my brain as something that sustains me. And so it's a powerful reminder that even when life is hard, and more often than not, it is hard. It's not a walk in the park. We can know and experience true joy because of who God is and how he is at work in our lives. And so even through all of that, I learned to be present, which is why there was no social media content related to my medical school graduation. That moment actually almost became sacred for me. I still had the big party. Everything still got planned, but the amount of love that I felt in that room, in that moment, I had my best friend get up and give a speech. We had family members, and one by one, all of them got up and just started pouring into me. And that was the moment I wanted to live in. I did not want to have the camera up. I did have a friend who is a photographer record videos of all those speeches. I have access to them and watch them on the hard days. But that was just something that I did not want to upload and create content for because that moment felt so sacred and special for me. I might insert a little bit of clips at the end just because that moment does deserve to be celebrated and documented somewhere on my channel. But the full speeches and everything like that, that moment it can't be replicated. The love and joy in that room definitely could not be replicated. And so that's something I wanted to feel. And so that brings me to where I am now. And so I'm halfway through residency. I've definitely had more good days than bad days. And every day I am so humbled and grateful to be able to do what I do. I consider it a privilege to save kids' lives, to be there for families in their most vulnerable state, to advocate for families and kids, not just here where I practice, but eventually across the country and across the world. And it's something that I don't take for granted. And with that, if you're still watching this 30 minutes later, I also want to encourage you, don't give up. I know things might happen along the way that make you feel discouraged, whether that be academically, whether that be personally, whether that be with relationships in your life. You have people who are there for you. I am one of them, your favorite internet mentor. And now that I'm back, I have lots of content about preparing for the match, but I did not want to start pushing that content without giving the authentic, true story about where I am now, what's been going on in my life, because my channel is all about authenticity, and it's life and it happens. And so I know it started out a little bit dark. Thanks for sticking with me, but it is a reminder that joy always comes. So with that being said, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. I hope that kind of this story of kind of talking through what I've gone through from match day to now can help encourage you to keep going. I will see you all in my next video. And as I always say, remember to finish each day strong, but most importantly, remember to finish each day whole. And if finishing strong comes at the expense of finishing whole, always choose being whole. I will see you all in my next video. Thank you so much for watching.